And I wanted to interject for a second in this podcast because when Catherine and I initially talked about doing this podcast, I didn't want to come across as big complainers, like we're just complaining about everything. But that is what this podcast is about. So if you don't like to hear us complaining about a vacation, turn it off right now because we're going to complain.
But this is the only one. This is the only one we complain about.
Yeah, we're usually pretty positive.
We are diapers on a plane.
Okay there. You hoser. Okay, no, for reals. Welcome to episode 29 of the Diapers on a Pod cast.
Watch. Diapers. Literal diapers on a podcast. Look at that. Okay, well actually this is a vlogcast.
Vlogcast.
Yeah. You can't see, but I'm holding up a diaper if you're listening to the podcast, which is hilarious right now.
It cracks me up.
It's the funniest thing I've ever heard.
Okay, so for reals though, welcome to Diapers on a Plane podcast number 20, what is it?
9.
Holy smokes, 29. We've done 29 of these things. Thank you everybody for watching, sticking around.
Okay, and this is what we've decided. So we've been doing 29 podcasts, and our last one was like totally impromptu. We had all these plans. We were going to go to the drive-in. We were going to talk about how the drive-in is our favorite summer activity, and we look forward to it every season, and all the things that we do. And we did talk about those things, but everything went wrong. And so when we got there, I was done. I was like mad. I was like, fine, we're not going to do it. Let's just give up. Like, let's just go home. We'll do it another time. And Gabe was like, nope, we're just going to do it. And it ended up being like, we loved it. We loved how it ended up being.
So this is great. I've finally broken Catherine of being like uptight, out of sight.
I am not uptight.
Angry all the time about having the perfect podcast.
No, that's not true. I like to plan.
Gabe, you're saying the wrong thing.
No, but you be honest. Stop it. That's not true. What's true is that I do like to plan, and then I tend to get upset when the plans don't go right. And then I'm like, wait, that was so much better. So we're just scrapping it. Like, we're just doing this.
I like to not plan.
Yeah, and we're just doing this.
Okay, so we're going to talk. The focus?
Oh, so you can't tell, but I have I'm filthy. I have potato salad in my hair from the kids. I have food all over me. And you know what? This is real life.
Okay, so we are up in Mill Creek Canyon having a campfire, hanging out with family, cooking hot dogs, marshmallows, and the theme of this podcast is...
the worst vacation ever.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so... yeah,
the best vacation ever.
To the kids, they actually had a fantastic time. To mom and dad, when we say it's the worst vacation, even the worst vacation is better than no vacation.
It was the best. It had a swimming pool and it was... so warm.
And that is why this is a double whammy. This is not just a podcast about the worst vacation ever. It is about the worst vacation ever and why we are so glad that we did it.
Yep, so cute. Okay, our worst vacation was Panama Christmas. We wanted to get away. Why did we want to get away?
We love celebrating Christmas away from home. It's one of the funnest things we can do. We get to celebrate different cultures and customs, and we get to do different things. We always get to bring home something from Christmas from another culture, and it's just super fun.
Yeah. So Panama. Why did we go to Panama?
So I belonged. I no longer belong, and we will get into that story. I voluntarily left. I belonged to a world schooling Facebook group, and you can list your homes for sale if you like home swapping or home for rent or something like that. And so there was a woman in Panama that wanted to rent out her home for Christmas. She was going to be gone. You did have to do it for a full month. And we had planned on going to Germany. We were going to go to Christkindl Market, and it was going to be cold, and I like cold Christmas. And we were like, you know what? Maybe it'll be awesome. Maybe it'll be an awesome, warm sand Christmas. And it was this great deal, and so we jumped on it. We were like, done, we're going to do it.
Yep, so we just did it. So I think the start of our bad trip, this happens a lot, but it turns out that she did have a house. It was a nice little, it was actually not a bad house. It was not a bad place to stay, but there was some misrepresentation as far as where it was located. It was near a beach, but I think she had gone to one of the houses right on the beach and taken the photo for the house, because she showed her front doorstep and the beach, and it was actually about a 4 or 5 block walk. You had to walk through 2 or 3 neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It was this gated community. It wasn't a bad place. The neighbors were really nice, but that was the first kind of red flag that this was falsely advertised. The spot we lived in.
Yeah.
But we went with it. We rolled with it, and
It was all right. It was still
all right.
close. It was still good. There was still a beach. There was still a pool.
Yep.
However, when we tried to go to the pool, there was some miscommunication. The pool it didn't appear to be open. And then we were like, that was a huge blow, right?
Yeah, half the time we didn't have permission. We'd have to argue with the guards. So none of that was set up for us that we could actually use the pool. So it wasn't easily accessible.
And the beach wasn't a great beach. Like, it definitely wasn't like a Caribbean beach where you go and you lay out and it's soft sand and the water laps at your feet and you can go dip in the water and cool off and come back. This was a very shallow beach for miles. We never actually figured out how to get into the water. And the beach itself was really rocky. It was not soft sand at all. But we made the best of
Yeah,
it.
it was okay. We've talked about all the things we loved about that vacation, so now we're just focusing on what we didn't, right? And we're going to focus on not the country, anything that we didn't like about the country. Panama's a wonderful place. It does have its quirks, but we're mostly talking about our experience that created the worst vacation of our lives. So the first one that we're going to mention
And
is...
if you want to see all this stuff, you can look at our old podcasts. Like, the kids created these cool tide pools that they're now recreating at home in our sandbox. So you can go back and look at those if you want to hear about all that.
So the first one we're going to mention, though, is we had a double blowout on the freeways. The roads in the Panama are crazy bad. And we made the mistake of also renting a car through the woman who rented us the house. So mistake number 1: do not rent a car. We talked about this before from somewhere where you're renting the.
I would say rule number 1 or hint number 1 would be, it's hard to say. Like, let's go into this because we have rented from people we know before, or from people we just met before, and it turned out great. So a couple examples. We were going to go to France for a couple days. Years and years ago, we just had the twins.
So rule number 1, we kind of made this a rule after staying there, was, and we've had better luck, like, not renting, but we borrowed houses from friends, like in France, right? And we stayed for a month. We were very respectful, but this was more of a business collaboration.
I think she considered it that we were house sitting, but we paid. Like, this wasn't a house sitting exchange. We paid, and as it turns out, it wasn't a very good deal comparatively.
No, we finally got there and kind of looked at comparable places, and you can stay in some really beautiful areas of Panama for less than we stayed.
Yeah.
Turns out it's not very expensive. Okay, let's jump right into the impetus of our less than stellar experience in Panama. Two things happened at once.
Well, so after, like, feeling like, well, this wasn't really exactly what we thought it would be, and we're a lot farther away than what we thought it would be, we were like, well, whatever. We're going to make the best of it. We're going to go explore Panama. We're here for a month. We've got all this laundry list of stuff we want to do. So we set out to go do it.
Yep. We went to these beautiful volcano, this valley of the volcanoes it was called. Spent the day there. It was amazing. And then on the way back, it started to rain like it does all the time in Panama. And if you've been to Panama, it has the worst potholes in the entire planet.
Well, if you've been anywhere in Central America or Mexico, like, driving in those regions, just they're not great road conditions.
It's anarchy. But the thing is, when it rains, the potholes get full of water, and so it makes it literally impossible to see them. And they're right in the middle of the roads. And I think if you're a local, from what I hear, they just zigzag right around them. They know, like, it's like the palm of their hand. They're just familiar with them. Anyway, we hit one of those potholes and got a flat tire, and it bent the rim a little bit, but we had a spare, which was no biggie. I was off the side of the road, and I changed it, and we got back in our car. We're like, whew, glad we have a spare, and started going again, and we started hearing a thump, thump, thump. Pulled over again. We had 2 blowouts at one time on the middle of the Panama Highway in the middle of the night.
Yeah, it was dark. It was super dark. I mean, keep in mind, this is December, so it's dark. It gets dark early. And it wasn't cold by any means, but it was raining, it was cold, it was dark, and it was in a foreign country.
So that was the most traumatic part of the trip, and I'm trying to talk about why, is because it was 5 hours of really not knowing what the crap we were going to do. And we talked about this in a previous podcast because it was so traumatic. It warranted an entire episode. But we were there wondering, we can't just leave the car. If we leave the car, it's going to get jacked.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah. If we stay, we could get jacked. The kids were starving. We were trying to get a hold of the owner. She wouldn't. She messaged us initially and just said, "I can't believe you had 2 blowouts," and then never talked to us again. And we were waiting to hear from her assistant, who was supposed to call us back. Never did. And so it was super traumatic. We were really upset.
Well, we had insurance that, even though we had called previously to see we would be covered, did not work in Panama. We looked up roadside assistance, which doesn't exist in Panama.
Yeah.
We had a local contact who rented us the car, who told us that she would be available and that she would have a local liaison available. Was not available, so we were literally stuck on the side of the road. Quite literally. We talked about getting an Uber just for me and the kids because we weren't that far away from our rental, but then I was like, I don't really feel good. Not that I was like gonna be much help, but it just felt like, safety in groups, and I just didn't want to leave him outside, and I didn't want to go home alone. It was just really it was a really difficult situation because we felt like we had zero options.
So it turns out we had full insurance, but not if something happens. so it's there for you for peace of mind, unless you need it. We've never been an experience in all of our travels renting cars where we have felt where we needed that kind of insurance. And so we talked about it before in a previous podcast, but definitely get the insurance. Go with the local stuff. It may cost more.
We do have a recommendation on our blog, which we'll link to in the bottom, but it's a very vetted, well-vetted, very, very good reviews and a good price for car insurance. And it covers all of these types of things that we're going to go over, plus more.
And I wanted to interject for a second in this podcast because when Catherine and I initially talked about doing this podcast, I didn't want to come across as big complainers, like we're just complaining about everything. But that is what this podcast is about. So if you don't like to hear us complaining about a vacation, turn it off right now because we're going to complain.
But this is the only one. This is the only one we complain about.
Yeah, we're usually pretty positive.
Yeah.
But we wanted to clickbait the crap out of you guys for this.
This is not clickbait. This is real. This was the worst vacation ever.
So we were there. Luckily, the bright side, well, the thing that kind of saved us in this situation is we had met a really nice couple the week before at the local church, and we'd gotten their numbers and we made good friends with them. And as a last resort, I gave them a text. And
just to be like, do you know what we can do? Like, we are stuck. What can we do?
Oh my God. And they rescued us.
Like, literally.
They drove out, picked up the tire, took it to a friend who knew how to repair tires, and brought it back within like 20 minutes repaired. So we still had the bent rim to deal with, but they got us on the road again.
Yeah. But this was, keep in mind, and part of it's our fault because we didn't think of contacting them. We also thought that the owner was going to get back to us. So a lot of that was just waiting and waiting and waiting. And luckily we had picked up some food at the volcano. So the kids were fed to a certain extent.
Well, and it was kind of funny too, because when they brought the tire back, they're like, oh, you take this rental back and get a new one. Because that's pretty common to hit those potholes, right? Yeah. So typically, if you're in Panama, learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
Pay for the insurance, because if you hit a pothole, anything happens, they are used to it. So every single road is just littered with cars on the side of the road.
Yes, and then tire shops, rim shops, all of these things. This is so common that when that kind of makes me mad is when we contacted the owner and she acted so flabbergasted. Yep. This is not a flabbergasting situation. This is normal life. Like this, there's nothing about this that wasn't probably expected.
Yeah, so if you go through the right channels for your rental, they will get them. So part of the cause of our worst vacation was us not just going with a rental company. So the next day, so we make it home thanks to
they were
our friends.
Like unbelievably kind. They followed us all the way home, and because we've got 2 tires, one of them got fixed, one of them was a spare. Luckily, it was a full-size spare. Yeah. But they made sure we made it all the way home. Like they really, I think we would still be on the side of the road right now if we hadn't. So it took we had to keep contacting them. Don't you remember? We had to keep contacting them. And I kept saying, and this is vindictive, okay? I shouldn't even admit this, but I was like, let's just drive on the spare for the whole time because I was very upset. She left me and my kids and my family stranded on the side of the road in a country that she was not a native of, but that was her home. And I was mad.
Yep.
I was mad. So we kept contacting her. We kept saying, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? Finally, she comes back and she says, I just figured you took care of it. Do you still need help? That was 2 days later.
So when the gentleman in charge of the car rental finally wrote me back, I sent him a picture of the rim and asked for the insurance, like how we should get it fixed. And he said, you just need to go take it somewhere and get 4 new rims. And I was like, what? It's like $1,200. Are you kidding me? And he said, yeah. I said, well, I thought we had 100% insurance. Well, it doesn't cover rims, I'm told. So 100%, I don't know. So, right. So we were like, this is supposed to be covered. I'm not going to pay for that. And so he says, I might have a guy who can take care of it, but I'm going to charge you $150 to come get it and then $150 to drop it back. And I said, do you know how much that guy will charge to fix it? And he said, I don't know. We'll let you know when we see it.
It's kind of starting to sound like a Ponzi scheme,
yeah,
maybe.
I think, okay. So I decided to check on Google to try and find my own tire repair place because it was beginning to feel like a racket. Like this is like they use the tourists as an extra way to squeeze more money out of them. I don't know. It just felt really off, right? And I'd never felt that way on a vacation before, where like I'm being taken advantage of here. So I decided to find my own with my own broken Spanish. I found a tire repair place up the street, and I drove up there. The guy was super nice. He said, I can't repair a rim here, but I can take the tire off for you, so you can take it next door. And he took around the corner. There's a guy about a half block away who had a rim shop there, and he's like, you can take it there, but they can't take the tire off. So for $3, they took the ruined tire off for me. And I don't think it was even ruined. I think no, it was ruined. So they took the tire off, and then I went over to
they did fix it. We didn't buy a new rim.
No,
they did.
I bought a new tire.
Oh.
So I'll explain that in a second. So I went over to the rim shop and took it there, and they were like, oh yeah, I can fix it, no problem. And so I'm like, okay. So he said it would take a day to do it. And so I was like, okay, no biggie. I'll come back tomorrow to pick it up. He's like, okay. And I think it was $60 total to repair the rim. Which the gentleman who took care of the car, I think it was going to be $350 to $400 total after it was done. So a little bit more reasonable. And so I went back the next day and talked to him, and he knew somebody who could give me a used tire that would fit that make and model of the car. And so he actually got in the car with me. He was the nicest dude in the world. Actually drove there, made sure I was taken care of. The guy only took cash, so he went with me to the grocery store to get cash, and really we had some good conversations about where he lived and all that stuff. Really nice. And so we got the tire fixed, and but we still felt a little burnt on the car situation.
Well, and we had paid for everything.
We'd paid for everything,
and she had no intention of covering the cost for her vehicle that we fixed for her. And I'm torn because I'm like, well, we were using it and this happened while we were using it, but when was the last time you rented a car and had an issue and you had to cover all the repairs and take care of everything? Like, right. We were in Mexico once on our honeymoon actually, and the muffler fell off, and this is an unusual circumstance, but we just took it back and got a new car. Like,
well, that's the thing about renting a car is the insurance is there to cover you if anything happens, right? And so I don't know whether that car even had insurance on it.
Yeah.
But it was just expected that if anything happened, you were responsible for it. So,
yeah.
So that was a terrible. We were feeling a little bit like our vacation was a little bit tainted at that point.
Well, we also felt like, well, she didn't have concern for us on the road, and then she wasn't even going to get back to us without prompting for days and days and days. So at that point, we were like, well, we're completely on our own. Like, we thought we had a local here, and we don't. So it just kind of made us really apprehensive about doing anything else.
So at that point, we were kind of saying, well, we're here. It's almost Christmas. We wanted to celebrate Christmas here, but we're kind of looking at the schedule to see kind of like when we could head home earlier, because at that point we're not having a lot of fun. But we decided to go check off the boxes of things that we still wanted to do in Panama before we took off, and it was getting pretty close. I think it was right after Christmas, right?
That this happened?
Mm-hmm. The next one. I think a few days later.
No, I think it all happened before Christmas.
Okay. And so
Because we left
right.
between Christmas and New Year's, and that's only a week.
Right. Okay. So during that time, we'd had a house cleaner there that the owner of the home wanted us to pay for as well.
Yeah, insistent that she come and insistent that we pay for it, but couldn't come when it was scheduled, couldn't come on the day she was supposed to be there. Finally came when it was not scheduled and we weren't there, and then we were in trouble for not letting her into the gated community, and we just kept getting all these like texts, just constant texts like, you're not doing this right, you're not doing this right. And it goes back to her feeling like we were house sitters when we weren't. We were on vacation and we paid for
it was a huge hassle. So a few days later, the house sitter was an issue. The pool was an issue that we weren't allowed in it half the time. And then we had another accident in the car, right? So we had gone up to that was the running and swimming.
We were up in the volcano again, but doing something different. We went to these Los Cajones or Los Cajones.
I don't know.
But it's these cliff jumps in this river that's way cool. And we went up there to spend the day with the family.
But you had to park in this like parking lot up about a mile away, and then someone would drive you down. You paid someone because of the bumpy roads. And it was kind of this self-parking area that's designated for that. Well, while we were there, someone scuffs the door.
Oh, that sideswiped it.
Kind of sideswiped the door a little bit. I don't know. It wasn't super bad, but it wasn't super pretty either.
Yeah.
Right?
It needed some work. Not a ton of work, but it's going to need some work.
But I mean, it's cosmetically, it was a scuff. We'll show a picture on the screen. But we were like, seriously? Holy crap. Like this, now we have to deal with this, right?
Yeah.
And we're just like, oh my goodness. And so we were going to tell the owner.
Well, just real quick, like we didn't tell her immediately because it was like, well, you didn't help us the last time. Why? Right. You're not going to help us this time. You're not here. You don't have a contact that's going to help us. So we didn't feel like we really needed to tell her like the second it happened, because we were on our own. We had no intention of keeping it from her. We just didn't tell her literally the second that it happened.
Right.
And the car was drivable. It didn't affect the driving. It was just cosmetic.
So and after the first experience, I realized that the reason we didn't contact them immediately was because we were on our own for everything anyway. We found out at that point we don't really have full insurance, and that if anything happened, they were going to just tell us to fix it anyway. And so we were like, crap, what do we do? Well, it turns out she had been sending the house cleaner to our house while we weren't there. And so we were off swimming one day, and the house cleaner came, and I think she saw the scuff and sent it to the owner. And then the owner is just calling us, just yelling at us about this damage to the car. And we're like, this really sucks.
And there's a slight more to this. So when we caught the house cleaner in the house without our knowledge, our things had been gone through. And I'm not talking about folding some clothes or putting some clothes away. Like, we had this bag of medicine and vitamins, and they were all in these little Ziploc bags, and they were labeled, and every single one had been gone through because they were in a different order, in a different place in the house, and they were all like lined up and organized, like you had been reading them, and then you were taking like an inventory.
Yeah,
it was quite unsettling.
It felt pretty dirty.
It was really unsettling.
So at that point, we felt very unsafe, even being in Panama. Her car guy then became the bouncer. He started intimidating us about the car, and we said we thought they were full insurance, and they're like, "There's no insurance. You're going to have to take care of this." And they said, "We have another renter right after you, and they need that car, so you have to get it fixed and cleaned up and ready to go before." And I was like, "Holy crap! You told us literally in the email, if anything happens to that car, it's 100% taken care of." That's the benefit of going with me, is that you don't have to worry about if anything happens.
And we had already been without the car for 4 days in the beginning, so paid for the repairs without the car. Now she wanted us to spend the week of Christmas and New Year's without a car, again, that we had paid for, pay for the repairs, and be without a car again so that somebody else could benefit from it at the end of it. And it just was starting to feel like we weren't safe in her apartment, because who knew who was going to be coming in. It felt like we weren't being taken care of where we were living, and we didn't have a contact that was honest in how she had portrayed the living arrangements and the car rental to go.
So at that point, I never gotten like that gut reaction that my family's in danger. We went into fight or flight mode, and we called the taxi driver who'd driven us there in the first place, and he came and picked us up, and we got the heck out of there.
Okay, true. But before that, you forget, she was sending me messages on Facebook and texting every 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It was constant. It was like, I can see you made a comment on Facebook, but you haven't responded to me. It was, I know you're there. My house cleaner told me you were there. It was stalking, and it was harassment. And so that, I think, is really important to point out, because it wasn't just like, well, we're not being taken care of.
We may seem like we're
leave.
just complaining here. We've been around the world for 10 plus years. This was bananas. It was bananas. Yeah. So we're not naming names. We wouldn't want to taint or throw this woman's name under the mud, but she was definitely out to maybe not purposely take advantage of people, but definitely an opportunist who wasn't upfront on the accommodations in the first place. And I think she had no insurance, no plans at all if things weren't perfect. So
what were our lessons learned? So number one, I think maybe not rent from a stranger that you meet on Facebook. This seemed very legit. We've done it in the past. I wouldn't say stranger, but we did rent, not rent. We actually kind of house swapped with a friend in France one year, in Annecy, France, for a month, and that turned out swimmingly. It was a great experience.
Okay, so we got babies screaming. This is real life here. This is our new way of doing podcasts. So number one, yes, we've had other experiences. So I think trust your gut for one.
Yeah.
I think if you have any red flags, listen to them.
But we didn't.
We learned that.
In the beginning, did we?
I don't know. I kind of did. In retrospect, and it may be one of those relationship things that
maybe one of those hindsight's 20/20 things.
Or it's once a relationship goes bad, you always look poorly upon it, right?
Yeah.
But this lady was a little bit of a swindler, so she tried to take advantage of us, and we got the heck out of there.
Yeah. No, we're talking about lessons learned.
Okay, lessons learned.
Okay, so maybe do a little bit more investigating. Maybe ask for reviews. I think that would have been really key, is asking for reviews. Maybe going through a third party. This was all just a hand-to-hand exchange. Going through a third party, and if you're going to rent the apartment, maybe not also rent the car. It was a little too close.
Yeah.
So that was number one. That was a lesson learned.
Yep.
Another lesson learned was know the country you're traveling to. Now, we did do our due diligence. We did call our car insurance. Maybe call them twice, because the first representative didn't know what they were talking about.
I think another thing we learned, we kind of pigeonholed ourselves into that property. If we had gone to Airbnb or something else where we could have backed out and gotten partial refund, we could have at least gone to another place in Panama.
Yeah.
We felt like we were locked in here, and it created a not fun. And I'm not saying that's her fault, that's our fault.
Yeah. We've gone on month-long trips before, but we weren't stuck in one area. And that made a huge difference, because if you get sick of an area, you can go, you can leave, and you're not stuck there. But if you're stuck there, we would have been out the money, and we didn't want to be out the money.
Yeah. But number three, trust your gut, right? If you feel like something's off, investigate that. So Catherine and I learned that when we were apartment managers. That's something one of our first property managers told us, is like, if you meet someone and your spider senses are tingling, find a reason to deny them. Yeah. Because it'll save you. We've had that happen before, where on paper this person looks perfect, but then something just feels really off. And then we've accepted them into an apartment. You find out that there was something hidden there that was really, really bad. Yeah. And so trust your gut. If something feels off, make alternate plans.
Yeah.
We are pretty fearless when we travel, but I think there were some red flags that we could have paid better attention to at the beginning here.
Yeah. And another lesson learned for us, because we fly standby, we easily could have left. We did lose some money out of the deal.
We left about a week early.
But if you're in a position where you're not capable of just up and leaving or getting a flight home without an exorbitant cost, have a backup plan where you can leave, where you can go somewhere else, or you can escape. Because I'm not saying we needed to escape in a dangerous sense, but we didn't feel safe. And
I would argue that I felt like that could have gone bad. We were
I
in
think
a,
it
we
could
were
have,
in-
yeah.
we were in a gated community with guards,
yeah,
and I think that the alarms could have been pulled to where we would have had a hard time leaving the country, and that's where I was getting really nervous about that.
Yeah.
So
those are our lessons learned. Okay, so here's the meat of it. Why are we so glad that we took this vacation? Why, despite all of these hiccups, all of these extra costs that we didn't factor in, why are we so glad that we took this vacation?
that's a good question, because the worst vacation is better than no vacation. For one, I think the life lessons we learned are invaluable.
We've been, like Gabriel mentioned just a few minutes ago, we have been traveling for 10 plus years. 10 years with flight benefits, even longer before that when we lived in Oregon and we were traveling before that without flight benefits. Before we traveled with kids. We have never had an experience like this.
Yep.
We've had things go wrong for sure. Nobody has a perfect vacation.
Okay. Yum, 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 yum. I would say another lesson learned. Go ahead, love.
But we have not. So for 10 years we've been traveling and we have never had an experience like this.
Yeah.
So this was a one-off situation. I say that we've had our lessons learned and we can learn from them and we can do better. And having one sour trip go wrong when you take 5 or 6 big multi-trips a year is not shabby at all. I mean, I'll take it.
Yeah, no regrets. No regrets. And another thing too is, especially in this time of COVID lockdown, planes shutting down, flight benefits in jeopardy, not being able to travel right now we really don't feel safe traveling, right? So if we went to another country, we could be quarantined for weeks.
Yeah.
They could decide that we can't leave the country. Right now we say take those opportunities when they come, because they may not come later.
Yeah,
So
they might be totally taken
definitely,
away.
that's why I learned some valuable tips. And you know what? These hard lessons we learned on this trip may really save our bacon down the road. Things could have been so much worse, but now we can take those life lessons we've learned and make sure that we're safer on our next trip. Make sure that we have insurance. Make sure that we don't feel buyer's remorse for paying a little bit extra in car insurance by using the local rates, which by the way are a ripoff, but they are what they are.
And we learned we got to see the Panama Canal. We got to go on a boat on the Panama Canal.
We gotta go to Monkey Island.
We got to cruise in a dinky boat next to giant cruise ships. We got to experience the Panama Canal, which is one of the wonders of the world. We got to, yes, see Panama Island and have little monkeys eat out of our children's hands. Like, these were really, despite the things that went wrong, when you go on a trip and you have these experiences, these are things that stay with you. And like you heard from little Eclair, she says it was the best vacation ever.
Yeah, they
She's
loved
not
it.
aware of any
You know
of the
what?
things that went wrong.
They just love being with mom and dad.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, right now we're camping. They would probably put up here having a fire locally with some marshmallows as high as ranked as Panama. It really doesn't matter. Just spending time with your kids is all
Making
they.
those memories.
That's all they care about.
Yeah.
Mom and dad just like to see new places because we're travel-aholics.
Well,
And
we
if it
got to
seem-
learn so much history.
And also, if it seems like we're bragging, this is a travel channel, so that's what you came here to hear anyway.
We really focus on the historical aspects of our travels, about how the world changed from what it was to where it is. And so for us, like, these are really invaluable. That's what we always encourage people to do, is really learn from where you go and take in those experiences. But absolutely would not change it for the world. Worst vacation ever.
Okay, sorry. Okay, worst vacation ever, but
And we
still
are so glad we
so
went.
glad we did it.
We don't know when our next vacation will be.
Yeah.
Last vacation we did go, we briefly talked about Nashville, and that was super fun. I was able to go a couple years ago with a friend. I took everybody back to eat some good food. But we had to leave that one early because Corona happened. And now flights are across the board. Every single airline is down to operating 5 to 10%. There are flights that we can't go out of the country because they're restricted. We can't do, gosh,
Oh, did she spit that out?
we can't do a lot of things. So he's got to go to the bathroom. I really don't want that on there.
I won't put it on there. Okay, so So that is our worst trip ever. Thank you so much for listening. All the baby crying, all the kids around. That's our new format now. We're keeping it real and authentic, right? So we got babies walking in front of the camera. That is the new us, right? In the time of pandemic, work from home chaos, we're gonna embrace that. We're just gonna grab onto it, hold it tight, never let it go. If you like what you see and hear, we're gonna be covering a lot more local things. For example, we want to see all the hot swimming holes. We want to go to all the local stuff now that we can't fly. So the Diapers on a Plane goes on. Even COVID can't get us down.
Let us know if you want to see us build a tree house, see our garden. Like
Chickens.
we got
chickens.
We got chickens. We're gonna build a PVC pipeline in our backyard. Like we're gonna do.
Things are gonna get weird. Okay.
It's gonna get crazy up in here.
Okay. We'll see you later. Like and subscribe.